I want to talk about the case for sustainability. A lot of people talk about the environmental benefits, the social benefits, but from a business standpoint, you can really boil down at when you implement sustainability within your organization is it helps you identify and lower cost. So the waste in your manufacturing, the waste in your processes, your procurement, your operations, etc. It will naturally help you identify risk, both in your direct operations as well as your supply chain. It's hugely valuable there. Identify those risks and of course, address them. It enables you to innovate from a product standpoint, operational standpoint, a marketing standpoint, really innovate. So again, it's sustainability is more than just tree hugging and recycling. It really can provide direct financial performance increases for your company across the board. So, and I'll talk a little more about this in the next one. But again, just don't think about it just from an environmental standpoint. That's just it's like the sprinkles on the cupcake, right? The value comes in cost savings, risk identification and removal, and brand reputation. I won't go through all of these, but I really kind of pull some stories out of these from the past to kind of help conceptualize some of these. I want to zone in on the employee engagement first, starting out. You know, when you begin to implement sustainability in an organization, when you start leveraging green teams and the policies and the procedures and really kind of the fun part of it, it really energizes your workforce. It really empowers them and brings, especially your younger workforce, your younger staff. They grew up thinking about sustainability. They grew up thinking about recycling. It's as important to them as breathing. So when you really leverage sustainability throughout your org, it gives everyone a mission beyond just the initial mission of the company, right? It gives it additional mission. I found so many times that once you get the program established, then you really got to move out of the way, because the employee, the energy and a passion from your teams just create their own force of good and will really expand and profoundly impact how the business operates in a good way, and most importantly, how the market responds to your business. So employee engagement is huge about this. It's really a slam dunk. There's been a huge, massive regulatory move this is recorded into 24, first part of 25, that we've seen the last couple of years. It's going to continue to grow. We are seeing the SEC requirements are being pushed back, but everything in Europe is sticking. Most of it's not going anywhere. California's adopting a lot of those. So yeah, the regulatory climate will continue to evolve and continue to advance. Sustainability helps you navigate those waters, because really most of them at the end of the day, besides their normal financial reportings, is they're wanting to know what does your governance look like, what does your environmental performance looks like, the impacts, and then how are you managing to monitor your supply chain from a human rights standpoint at a macro level, right? Speaking of supply chain, that's really when it comes into risk mitigation and identification. The last thing you want is that you've got a great supplier you've been working for forever, and you come to find out that they're bringing in and using forced and slave labor. With social media, everything can come out. That will directly, regardless of who they are, it will be tied to your brand, and it will tarnish your brand 100%. And we'll talk about more of that later. There's a lot of capital out there. Depends on the market and the industry you're in. There's access to capital when you embed more sustainability in your operations. That'll open up those doors for you. Of course, that'll provide you longer validation. More like the tactical, nuts and bolts, is it really helps you find the waste in your operations, the waste in your supply chain, the waste, just the inefficiencies you have, because sustainability will naturally force you to start tracking everything. And when you start tracking, you start seeing the trends, and the models will predict increases and decreases, and really that's where you'll find those savings. So again, just a ton of operational efficiencies when you implement across it. And lastly, long-term viability. Sustainability at its root is sustainable, right? You want your business to last, right? Sustainability ensures that happens, because you're not looking at it from a pure profit standpoint. You're balancing the financial performance against the environmental impact and the social responsibility. So it really gives your company that long-term viability that you want. All right, now we're going to talk about something that really is near and dear to my heart, small to medium-sized organizations. Because I've seen throughout my 20-year career that the big orgs, the big gorillas when it comes to consulting, focus on the fortunes, rightfully so. But what I realized in working with the fortunes and working in the fortune organization is they have thousands and thousands of small and medium-sized enterprises supporting them, right? And a lot of those organizations just unfortunately just don't have the bandwidth, the resources, the finances to support a full-time sustainability team. So that's really kind of my passion, is to really kind of figure out and get sustainability in a way that is easy to implement through small to medium-sized organizations until they do get to the point where they can bring on full-time talent. Because small to medium-sized enterprises are the workhorse. To me, they can make magnitudes of improvements over what you see in the headlines with the fortunes, magnitudes of improvements. So I'm really excited to speak about really these programs and these different initiatives that you can put in any size organization, whether you're a startup or a global org. Everything within this course is foundational and can be built upon. I want to introduce you to the 4-point sustainability strategy. We have a whole workbook on our website to kind of take you a deeper dive. But really, this came to be kind of really everything kind of harmonized when it comes from implementing sustainability programs really about 10 years ago. And really figuring out that when you look at, as I looked and worked in different project sizes and scales and innovation and speed and everything else, at the end of the day, they really came down to 4 steps. And this is really where sustainability hits the world. Really, I feel it's really tactical and manageable for you as a business leader. Because if you think about this, it's where do you want to go? What does success look like? Net zero, 100% recyclable. I want to have the best employees in the region. What does that end goal look like? Like what's that North Star? Where to? The next thing you want to look at is where are you at? Where are you standing? Like, what does your operations look like? What does your KPIs look like? What does your governance look like? Like, what do you have in today that you're managing, and how is this managed? Next, who's going? Because road trips aren't very much fun by yourself, but they're a blast with a ton of people. So who's going is really about stakeholders, pulling in partners, pulling in your green team, pulling in your supply chains, pulling in innovators, really building that team to really drive you to the mission of your work too. And lastly, what's the story? How did you get there? Everybody loves a good story. When you started at step 1, where to, you probably thought it was a beeline. I have to do 6 steps and I'm going to get there. But as you go through where from and who's going, and you're in the middle of the journey, you realize, wow, this really is taking some really interesting turns and bends. And really, the story is where it plays out. Was the budget what you thought it would be? Did it move faster or slower? Right. And it's really important that as you go through, as you implement the 4 points, and by the way, this works for any project. It doesn't matter if it's a sustainability project or just really any project. The same principles apply. Share that story. Share the wins and also share the bruises. When it comes to sustainability, transparency and accountability are key. Right. So no one is going to look down on you because you didn't, because you learned along the way, right? That shows maturity, that shows responsibility, and that's when you're balancing the people, the profit, and the planet, really recognizing it and sharing the fact. We thought it was going to be ABC. We learned along the way that we needed this, and this, and we adapted to it. Right? So share those successes and share those wins and share those learnings so others can learn from you, because really a rising tide raises all ships. So again, we have a full workbook on our website, but where to, where from, who's going, and what's the story? I'm sure you've heard the term green teams, recycling, sustainability champions. There's a bunch of different terms, but really green teams are the heart and soul of your program. They are the boots on ground. They are the innovators. They know the pain points, they know the wins, they bring the energy, they bring the innovation. They are the program. I've seen so many programs live and die on the green team. They live and thrive when the green team is engaged and has resources and energy behind them. And I've seen fantastic programs putter out because it became too centralized and the local voice was gone. So they basically dismantled the green teams. So green teams really, in most organizations, sustainability teams are very small, 1 to 2. Maybe someone does it as a dash. If you're lucky, you have a full team. But even, I've worked with orgs that have a staff of 10, 15 sustainability experts, and they still utilize green teams. So green teams are the best resource you can have when it comes to sustainability. We have a full workbook that kind of walk you through exactly what you need. But really, the things I want you to kind of remember is when you gather your workforce for your green teams, you want to get a diverse set of staff from different departments, your legal staff, your marketing staff, your product staff, your services, sales, supply chain, all of them. Because as you begin to implement sustainability initiatives, they're going to help you figure out quickly and vet them before you dedicate a bunch of resources towards it. They'll basically, now this won't work because of that, or have you thought about this? So really, green teams gives you that voice of reason throughout. As you go into it, because as I said earlier in the presentation, they are the energy, and be careful because when you energize them, you better get out of the way because it's like herding cats. You got to kind of keep them pointing in the same direction. So really, as you run your green teams, you begin to spin them up. Think about those goals. Think, what's the purpose? Are they your boots on ground? Do they need to be the voice? Are they your training arm? Really kind of define the value you need them to bring to the organization and to the mission of sustainability. The biggest one I've seen is when you can get executive buy-in. Get an executive to sponsor it, get an executive to sit on it, on the calls. Even if it's just introduction or once a quarter, it tells the staff that this is important. This isn't just a check the box exercise, and tells the market too. It tells the market that this is important. This isn't just some hobby buried in the company. And of course, like any team, you want to establish clear roles and responsibilities, reporting guidelines, deliverables, all that kind of stuff. And lastly, run them through the 4 points. As they bring an initiative, an idea to you, so they want to do a recycling campaign, or they want to look at auditing the supply chain for responsible sourcing certifications, or if they want to implement more end-of-life strategies through a product, teach them how to use the 4 points and let that be the mechanism to kind of test bed those initiatives and ideas. And again, as I said earlier, share the story. When you get done with it, share the story. But again, green teams with a passion, they're your soldiers. They love to do it. Put them to work. Earlier, I talked about ESG really is sustainability with the G, right? And how the G, the governance, is that stick or carrot, depends on how you operate. It's really important that 2 things. Number one, that you have a very robust policies throughout your organization. And we talk a little bit more on the next slide. And your reporting structure, your governance. So how does your sustainability program, whoever manages it, how do they report up the chain of command? Do they report to a C-suite? Do they report to the board? Do they report to the market? How does that governance look like, and how does that accountability look like? Because really you want to show the market that, again, this isn't just some pet project. There's some meat, some resources to it. So yeah, policies and governance, hugely important. Once you create them, you can kind of let them sit there and simmer. You need to kind of dust them off, every couple of years, but they'll pretty much sit there and run and autopilot for you once you have the foundation built. We'll talk about more about the policies on the next slide. What we're showing here is really just a handful of policies. Most of them are pretty common sense. Some of you've never seen before. But what I want you to remember is as your sustainability program evolves, everything that I've recommended within these policies will enable you to double dip in the reporting. Right, so it's purposeful at looking at the major reporting requirements out there, TCFD, SASB, pick an acronym soup. They all ask for different policies that address different departments within your organization, different operational styles. I've included most of those in this list. So within they kind of broken out of governance, operational, that's where you're talking about your EH&S, your travel, environmental, your human resources. Code of conduct is huge. Code of conduct for your workforce, code of conduct for your supply chain. hugely valuable resources. Of course, to protect your workforces, all your financial policies. Do you have a sustainable procurement guidelines? How do you reimburse your staff? And of course, technology. Cyber is growing. Technology is growing. AI is not going anywhere. So having systems and policies in place to address them. But as you begin to create these policies and run them through your system and really incorporate them into your organization, publish them. I know that goes against everything you learned in typical business. Publish, publish, publish. Sustainability is the conversation that everybody wants to talk about, right? There's no secret sauce in it. There's no hidden agenda, right? So it shows to the market that not only you're talking, but you're also walking, right? Because nothing will raise a red flag when you've got a bunch of sustainability claims and there's not a single stick of evidence in your website or your publications. So every client I work with, I always encourage them to post your policies. There's nothing secret in them, mostly. I mean, yeah, there's some in there, but really at the end of the day, the philosophy and the strategy behind them are pretty common. So don't be afraid to publish them. The ones I would definitely focus on first would be code of conduct for your staff, code of conduct for your supply chain, especially code of conduct for your supply chain. If you're a publicly traded company, or if you're worried about minerals in your supply chain and forced labor, conflict minerals is a policy I would definitely recommend hitting that first. EH&S and some of the other ones you can put in the back burner, but definitely supply chain. When it comes to sustainability, ESG, supply chain, conflict minerals, maybe some type of CSR, corporate social responsibility commitment. And then after that, I would look at the environmental performance, some environmental policies, some responsible sourcing policies, and of course your typical human resources and operational policies. All right, but again, everything listed here double dips. So when you start looking at reporting, they'll cover both of them.